One of the things that I enjoyed as we continue this conversation with Brad Williams, Mike Golic Jr., and Mike Ryan about the evolution of our industry is the evolution of the take. How it is that in the modern age, with everyone at this trough giving opinions, how you go about evolving the way you're giving your opinions. We have arrived at the Stephen A. Smith watch your mouth portion of the take that he directed at Tyreek Hill. That's not something I've seen much from journalists, but somebody here who has arrived at the take game and really is interested in being at things first. Emmanuel Acho has started the conversation about whether a college player should sit earlier than I've ever heard it started about Caleb Williams. As soon as he lost to Utah last weekend, Acho's like, you're not playing for a national championship. You're not going to play in the bowl game. Start sitting right now. And I think his take would have held up fine if not for this whole pesky idea that this is a paid professional athlete now who's expected to play college football for money.
Where my mind went first. I'm like, okay, Emmanuel, you're not writing the checks and Caleb, it's been well reported what he gets in NIL. They're not paying that with the expectation that he's just going to opt out and say, forget it before November. I know it's become commonplace now for people to opt out of the bowl games. And my whole attitude as someone that does contribute to NIL programs is I'm paying for us to win the Sun Bowl.
Sure.
Like, I want to win the Sun Bowl.
What a depressing sentence that is, by the way.
It's year 2 of a 4-year plan.
Fight God.
Yeah, fight on.
Hey, I'll see you there.
Listen, my God. It is so interesting, though, that point, because that's always been at the forefront of the argument that those of us who, and God, all of this is like a weird conversation about who's presenting these ideas in good faith or not, who is coming to it with the best interest of the players in mind, or who just wants to contribute from the national level with something that feels accessible into the conversation. I don't know what any of those look like for Acho. This isn't about him specifically. But with that, it was always, well, with
He's
players,
going to be devastated to hear that.
Yeah. with players sitting out games like the Sun Bowl and stuff, it was, well, if you want them there, pay them. And so now we've gotten to that point where there is money on the table for that. And in Caleb's case, like, they're not out of the Pac-12 race yet. It feels like that, but they've only got one of those losses in conference. The Notre Dame loss doesn't hit the same way. And so this whole conversation about what actually matters in college football also kind of works its way into that. And there's still real stakes on the table for them.
Yeah, and the whole thing is Caleb might actually come back, or he's threatened to come back to USC and say, like, oh, if I'm going to go to a team that I don't like, then I'm just going to stay at USC and still make more money than a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL. So he doesn't have the threat. So it's like, yeah, no, he can just stay at USC. I'm saying this as a USC fan and alumni, that I would like him to stay at USC and keep going.
You're highlighting exactly why this is the one dude that shouldn't do that, because it's such a big deal and his options are so great in that if he doesn't like the pro fit, he can just say, no, I'll stay at USC. Well, part of that is playing for your pay. And if you're going to opt out on a season that can still be very good, as Lincoln Riley's trying to build a program, and I do think legacy does matter in Caleb Williams' case, because that's a great school with a lot of great quarterbacks. Sure. He's got a shot, considering how much he's played at some all-time records. And also, the last 2 games, not the greatest film, to the point that the national discussion is, oh, Drake May is in this conversation again. There's considerably a lot to play for, including money. The money that you're paying, like, these deals are season-long deals, and sometimes there's a handshake agreement. Okay, we're a 3-loss team. I know we made it to a New Year's bowl game, but we can all understand. You're the Kenny Pickett. You're the best on this team. You've been here for a while. You've given a lot. You can take this one off. But we're having this conversation in October because the quarterback in particular had a 3-interception game 2 weeks ago and lost again to Utah. Like, his direct performance has a say on whether or not he finishes the year.
But I guess that the thing is, if we wanted to take this as the ultimate, like, high-level thought version of this, of does Caleb Williams need any more college football to prove anything to anyone in the NFL? The answer is no. He does not need college football
by that
anymore.
standard, he could have not played this season. He just needed to
Yeah,
play.
he would have
and-
been the
and
number one pick.
Like he could have sat out the entire season. If you're going to stop him playing now, you might as well have stopped him playing before. You wouldn't have hurt his value anymore.
No, we learned that during the pandemic season when you had players like Jamar Chase, and I believe Penei Sewell also didn't play that fall, and were still top draft picks. They were still first-round draft picks because at a certain point you know, and we already know with Caleb Williams, you can have, and we will, and I thought it was going to take longer to get to the Drake May thing, but we're here now because of that performance. But even still, it's not that he needs college football anymore to accomplish those things, but it's all those other things. That's what I try and explain to people all the time is these aren't easily made decisions by these players to stop playing with their teammates, to sit out even a bowl game that seems meaningless. Like the insinuation that bothers me most is that these guys are somehow lesser competitors because they've opted out of playing in the Gator Bowl or something like that. No, but they've had to for so long weigh the economic disparity between college and NFL. Part of that conversation has changed now, and because of that, I think you might see some different decisions made, but it's still for a lot of guys too. The destination for everyone is not just college football. For me, it was. Like that was, the more I think about it in retrospect, I grew up wanting to play at Notre Dame. But for a lot of guys, it's they want to play on Sundays. And so some of it's the economics, but it's also just like, hey, I'm this close to my dream. I'm this close to the thing I've wanted. And I've seen what happened to guys who got really close and then got hurt and how much it can throw that off.
Lincoln Riley, where are we with him? He comes in, immediately creates a gust of expectations, immediately creates offense. They win a bunch of games. Their last season ended right toward the end when they looked like they were going to be in the playoff and possibly win the national championship. And now he comes off more and more like he's got some dictator tendencies that I didn't know about when he was at Oklahoma. He's limiting a lot of access to his players, wants to be controlling the media, isn't allowing his players to talk after losses.
For the first time in USC history, by the way, players were not made available after a loss.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to have that come in now in one of the biggest media markets in the world. You can do that.
But it doesn't
in
care
Norman.
about sports. This market does not care about sports.
What?
This market, Los Angeles, does not care about sports.
I will
You
push
cannot
back
You
hard.
cannot find. Mike's been trying to find a bar that'll show him a game for 2 weeks.
I had to break it to somebody that the Rams were back. Like, hey, can you put the local game on? They're like, which one's that?
Thought
I'm
he
like,
might cry.
The Rams are. They won a Super Bowl here 2 years ago.
We care. We just care about the Lakers only when they're winning.
Well, and I think it's less that this market, because they definitely don't care here. I can assure you that.
It's
That's
just
why.
different.
That's why they got outsourced to the Big Ten. But people do care about USC, and that's the difference. Is Oklahoma in the national conversation relative to USC in the national conversation. My God, is that a different world?
Yeah, but I think it washed over me. Lincoln Riley was always kind of earmarked as a guy that'd be, that's an innovator, linked to Cowboys jobs in the pros. And I see how he's handling just this media market. And it's not a hardcore, passionate media market about college football. It's just there's professionals here that don't necessarily need the program to succeed for them to succeed.
Yeah.
And I see a guy that cannot handle the NFL and the pressures of that job and the media scrutiny of that job right now. And it's not what I expected because I didn't know this aspect of his personality in Oklahoma.
I think the one thing, because a lot of that, there was an issue with a journalist beforehand who reported something that apparently they heard outside of it that he took
a student journalist
he took umbrage with, and that's more what I latch on to. Not making players available for the media after the game, I can almost spin to that's someone who's trying to protect them from what's coming, and part of me as a player does appreciate that idea. You're making things worse.
They
at
don't
the
need
end of the
protection
day.
from learning how to respond to a loss at Utah. They've had plenty of experience there.
They need
Also a fair point.
They need protection from Bill Plaschke.
They need protection from Utah on the field is what they need.
Kyle Whittingham makes what? Half of what damn it, I said Deion Sanders, but it's always my takeaway. How does Kyle Whittingham do this? He's just ruining season after season.
Lincoln Riley hasn't beaten Utah yet, correct?
No,
He's
not.
lost 3 times to Utah.
Yeah, you mentioned what Caleb Williams has to prove in college. I'd like to see him beat Utah.
It'd be
One
a
more
good
year.
place to start. Dan, you bringing up Lincoln Riley, and Mike, you bringing up Lincoln Riley relative to the NFL. I thought that was the most interesting. There was an article in the LA Times about him last week, and Lincoln off the field through the last couple of years has been through the ringer. He lost a couple of his coaching mentors in very tragic fashion, Mike Leach being one of them. And the article sounded so much like a guy that was having a bit of an existential crisis with his play at this level of the sport. And a lot of it, and I think this is the read from a lot of people, was a guy who looked longingly at what the NFL afforded you as far as balance of lifestyle-wise, and seemed to be really openly pining for that in a way that was surprising for one of the kings of college right now.
Do I have this wrong, though? Because I associate this kind of coach, the Mike McDaniel, the Sean McVay, I associate them with being a little more media friendly, a less of a dictator type. None of these coaches have any use for the media. We're intrusive. We are there to create problems that they don't want, and they don't need our publicity anymore. But I think of the young coaches as having a different relationship than the Belichicks.
OCs typically more media friendly. Defensive coordinators grind their molars into dust like Brett Venables.
So it surprises me when I hear this about, I don't know what I'm doing there. I think, well, this guy creates offense and is a young person, therefore he's not going to be a jackass, or he's going to have less jackassery when it comes.
What you're doing is recency bias, and it's honestly not something I knew about Lincoln Riley prior to this year, and I think you highlighted something important. This may not just be an existential crisis. This might be a midlife crisis.
Yeah, he just turned 40. That makes sense.
Moved to L.A.
Yeah.
I mean,
the signs are there.
I mean, if he starts like driving around a Porsche and dating a 19-year-old, we're gonna have issues here. But like, imagine
make him Urban Meyer.
Imagine being in college football
without the success,
that pressure cooker, and looking at the NFL head coach and be like, they have more work-life balance.
But that's true.
Those are guys that haven't figured. They have a full 35 minutes a day to see their families.
But that is true, and that's why the NFL is actually paying guys less than college guys right now. I was speaking to an agent, and college coaches are having a very difficult time staffing with the top-of-the-line candidates. You don't have to look any further than the top of the line when it comes to college football. The book on Nick Saban that is a head coach rehabilitation program. You go there, you'll get a job somewhere else within 2 years. Look who his coordinators are. No offense to Tommy Rees, but not top of the line. It's not the Bill O'Briens of the world. Hell, he took Miami's old defensive coordinator last year, who essentially was parted ways with. It is not the same hustle because the life balance, there is no such thing. It is nonstop. It is all consuming.
I cannot tell you that I have many sentences in my life that start in a more unpleasant way than you just started that with. I was talking to an agent.